Hey everyone, I am with Lorene Stanwick, and if you listen regularly, you may remember her from episode 105. She's a survivor of sibling abuse, and she talked about when family doesn't acknowledge the abuse. And then she came back for episode 106, and she focused on healing and her own healing journey. So today I said, come on back. I don't know if you recall, or I'll let you know again, that I met Lorene at a conference that was part of SARA, which is the organization that I am on the advisory board of. It's the Sibling Aggression and Abuse Research Advocacy. Is that right?
Initiative.
Initiative.
Yeah.
Thank
Is
you.
initiative in there? No. No, you're right, Sarah.
SAARA. Anyway, we have built a lovely friendship, and I said, come on back and let's have a conversation about sibling abuse. What are we going to talk about? I don't know. But it was an opportunity for us both to, I think we have some questions for each other. And, when we have that kind of thing, we never know where it's going to take us. So let's see. Lorene, hi, and thank you for coming back.
My pleasure. I love talking to you. I mean,
Thank
who
you.
else loves to talk about sibling abuse?
Well, that's true. And you know what? That is very funny because one of the things that I was thinking about is how do we not turn people off? And I don't think we're going to turn people off who are familiar with sibling abuse or who've had the experience of sibling abuse. But how about the rest of the world who might be interested in it or is learning about it or think it's a bunch of bullshit because everybody fights with their sibling, and they think that it's silly or normative or that we're dramatizing. I was talking to Jane Epstein, I don't know if you know her, recently, who wrote a book about her experience of sibling sexual abuse, and she also said that she encounters a lot of that, especially with sexual abuse, because there's so much shame connected to that, and people think that it's gross and disgusting. And, my experience and my professional focus and research on um, um, sibling emotional or and physical abuse draws a different kind of reaction, which isn't disgust necessarily, but it's just kind of disbelief. Does that really go on? And oh my God. And even though, I think that we've progressed in that area and getting the word out a little bit more, it's still something, that people don't kind of buy into. So I ask you, my question for you is how do we not turn people off?
How do we not turn
Pause.
people
It's a
off?
good one, right? It's a
Yeah.
stumper.
Yeah, well, it's the not turning them off as opposed to turning them on. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so like I've had so many moments where I've said something like, yeah, my work is in the area of sibling abuse, or I wrote a play about sibling abuse. And some people will be like, it drops, it falls in the middle of the floor and it doesn't go anywhere. And so I don't pursue it. But then I have enough conversations where people go, like I can see their face shift, right? Where they clearly haven't thought about it before, clearly have never heard those two words together. And then they take a moment and they think about it, and we can watch the light go on and they go, "Oh my God, of course. Of course. Why wouldn't it be called abuse?" Like they you can see they're going, okay, spousal abuse, elder abuse, child abuse. You can see that they're putting the pieces together.
Oh, nice.
And and then often they'll have a story or somebody they know.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen every day or anything, but
Right,
it's
right.
happened enough times
Yeah.
that I keep saying it. Like I have no qualms about saying to whoever I happen to be talking to. I don't like walk into a room and say, "Hey, you want to hear about this?" But if I'm in a conversation and it comes up or people are asking what I do or whatever,
Yeah.
um, I'm eager to say it because I think more people well, I think more people need to know what it is, but also I think there's a lot of people who want to know what it is and don't even know that they want to know what it is.
Right.
You
I
know?
like your reframing. That's awesome. And I also think that as I hear you speak, I think you're right. I think there has been a shift. And maybe I'm not paying enough attention to it, that when I do raise it or I teach students about it, there's not this dismissal, certainly, but they're students. So I'm not out there kind of in the world outside of that where, they're eager to learn, they're hearing, and the professor knows everything, right? I don't have that experience in real life where people are, really, oh my God, that's a thing. But maybe I need to be speaking about it more in other arenas than I do, like you do.
Yeah. Well, and also when I was doing the play, like,
Mm.
and now I'm working on a kid's book, and I'm working on our new research project with this fellow in London. But so most of it is when it comes up in a conversation. But when I was doing the play, it's like I really had to push it because I was selling tickets. We had to raise money. I had to be really out there with it. And
Right.
so that kind of gave me practice in doing it.
Right. So let me
And
just say the play. The play is Lorene wrote an amazing play about sibling abuse with three different stories and followed kind of those three different aspects of sibling abuse through, their relationships with others, whether it's their parents or significant relationships. And this was produced in Toronto, right?
Mhm,
And shown in Toronto. And then she had talkbacks and, had a great experience with that. Yeah, so great.
mhm.
So I think, when I've spoken with you, you talked about that experience as really healing. What do you think the most valuable part of your post-traumatic growth has been?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's an intense
Relation
question.
in relation to the play or
No, I don't know if the
not
play
necessarily?
was the most significant or valuable part in your growth, but
Huh.
whatever it may be.
Okay, so
Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's a time, right? How do you pull that out?
yes, well, so in 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 order to honor the very first truth that came into my mind, um, and maybe you'll want to edit this out, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll want you to edit it out, I'm not sure. But I've worked with a shaman, and I have when I started doing the work, I had and continue to have a lot of pretty profound spiritual experiences. And one of them was having a memory return of having had a near death experience. That when my sister would strangle me during one of those times, I actually crossed over into the next realm and was sent back by my grandfather. So I think I may have told you that story. I had no intention of telling it today.
Did, but you know what? I think this is another aspect of you saying edit it out is the idea that people are going to think this is silly, right? Because this isn't kind of mainstream healing as we know
Yeah,
it.
right.
But it was valuable to you, so it's valuable.
Well, it was crucial in a few ways. One, it helped to understand why I've had a lot of very interesting, wacky, um, sort of psychic-y things happen throughout my life. And it helped to explain that. Once I understood more about what near-death experiences were all about and it's fascinating. I've been delving into that world a little bit.
Mhm.
There's an organization called IANDS, IANDS, which has a ton of really interesting information and videos and etc. Anyway, um, but what came out of it for me right in that moment when I watched it happen and watched myself come back and watched my grandfather send me back and say, you can't come here now. You're just a little girl. You can't be here yet. And so I came back and saw my sister go through a process of terror. I could hear her calling me back. So watching her face go through terror and then relief when I was gasping and came back into my body. It's like I was watching it in a movie, but I was also in it at the same time. And sort of feels and literally gasping in my body now as I came back in the memory, and watching her face go from terror to relief to anger. And what I learned in that moment was that it was a crucial moment in her, that she was kind of, I knew she was going to be spending the rest of her life making up for that on some level. It was
Oh,
just this
wow.
knowledge that
Yes.
came through with it.
Yes.
And I felt this incredible compassion for her.
Uh-huh.
And I felt this total forgiveness.
Uh-huh.
It's like whatever happened to her to make her do that, I have no idea. We've
Uh-huh.
never spoken about it. I've said to her, if you want me in your life, you need to take responsibility for this, and we'll have a conversation. And that's never happened. So, um, but what was I going to say? But I think that has been the most profound healing aspect of this whole journey, is because it put a lot of pieces into place.
Yeah.
Like it helped me to understand that, you know, I always knew that I always thought deeply there was something really wrong with me, but I also knew enough to go to therapy my whole life to figure it out, because I knew underneath that there wasn't. And I think that's one of the things that I've come to with the spiritual aspect of my healing.
Listen, I think that everyone finds their way in different forms, right? And that worked for you, and maybe that'll work for somebody else if you want to go see a shaman. But that makes me think about ketamine, right? That some people use in that way. It makes me think about therapy that people use in that way. And it makes me think about dreams, that it's amazing, like what you're describing could be a dream, right? Or it feels dreamlike. No, not so much no,
Oh
okay.
no,
I
oh
don't
no,
know.
yeah,
I
no.
don't, I'm not, you mean that feels very, very real. It felt that you were communicating on a real level with your sister.
Um, I got to relive the experience.
Okay.
And I mean, I actually spoke to somebody from that organization, and she went through these are the things that happen to people who have had a near death experience that's obvious, like they're in a hospital bed or they're in surgery and they die and they watch their bodies die
Right, right.
and they hear conversations in it. So there's tons and tons of proof of that.
Okay.
And so when I spoke to her, I said, like, I have no proof. Like, the only proof I have is this memory. And so she said, let's go through all the qualities that they come back with and how it changes their life.
Okay.
And she went one by one through, I think there were 6 or 7 points. And it was like, yep, 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 I've had that. Yeah. So it sort of aligned with all the research on near death experiences.
Okay.
And so for me, I felt like it was, I didn't make it up. I knew in my body I didn't make it up. I couldn't have thought of that. Like if I could have made that up, I would have made it up sooner or something. You know what I mean?
I do.
And there,
I do, but it's a little elusive, right, to somebody who hasn't had that experience. And we could do a whole episode on that
yeah,
because it
yeah,
is very interesting, and I'd like to learn more about that. But I do also want to get to, your other questions. That's okay. No, no, no. I think that I think what people can take from that is that everybody finds healing in different, like I said, in different forms. And the fact that you did find healing through that is part of your story, and it gave you relief, and that's what matters. But if
and
people want to learn more about that in particular, maybe we could do another episode on, shaman work. Really, it's very
yeah,
curious. You don't hear a lot about it.
yeah, yeah. And it gave me an understanding. I mean, there was still lots of other work that I've done and had to do over the years and still do and still come across moments where I'm triggered and you know, you know, um, yeah, yeah, I know it's way out there. We can edit this out.
I don't know. I think talk about triggering. I mean, that raises one of your questions. right? Didn't you ask about
Yeah.
what do you do when you get triggered? I know you were thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of my questions for you was, we all get triggered. We are both survivors of abuse. What do you do when you are in a moment where you're out of whack, you're triggered, something happens
Yeah.
to throw you off? How do you handle that? What do you do for
Well, I have
yourself?
to say, I mean, I've been working on myself in therapy for a very long time. So the idea of being triggered, I don't find myself having those experiences so much. Do I have transference where, I project onto other people, expecting them to relate to me in a certain way based on my prior experience, right? We all do that. I think unconsciously, the way we relate to people has a lot to do with what we've taken in over our lives, what we've been told, how we make it our own, right? If you've been criticized or abused, that becomes the image of yourself, right? I'm not valuable. I'm this, or this, whatever the messaging was, right? Subtly or very kind of loud. Um, so that goes on for all of us, every human being, I believe. And I think I'm very aware when that's happening, that I'm projecting onto somebody else. So I'm glad to say that because I think it's that awareness that allows me not to feel the intensity as I once did, right? So if like somebody rejects me or they don't love what I'm saying, it's not like I'll get quiet or I'll be shut down, which happens in my family, right? I will continue on and think, oh, this person's not interested in what I'm saying, or they have a different view, or it's not going to affect me in terms of how I move through this world, which is, I'm proud to say, I'm glad to say my own growth. The person that really still triggers me is my father.
Mm.
Because I think he's really the primary family member I have left, and I am in constant contact with as he's aging. And when he reacts to me in certain ways, it's a visceral reaction that I have. And have I learned to manage it? Not completely, because I still get very angry and upset with him, but I'm still working on understanding that these are his limitations and his perception of me or how I'm presenting, right? I'm too animated, I'm too this, I'm too loud, I'm too whatever, is not how the rest of the world receives me.
Mm.
So, that's kind of a constant self-talk when I'm in his company. And I think likely it probably affects me in other areas more than I'm attuned to in this very moment. But I think I've worked really hard to feel better. I mean, it's like even starting a podcast, right? Like me, have a voice. This is from a family who squelched my voice in many various ways. So what do I have to say? Does anybody want to, going to listen to me? So yeah, I'm glad that I'm not grappling with that in the way that I used to. How about you?
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and just one thought that comes
Yeah,
to mind.
yeah.
I think that the moment where I don't know if it's a moment or it's many moments piled up on top of each other, but to sort of get, oh, this isn't about me. This is your thing. Oh, this is your thing. You didn't
Exactly.
call me not because I did something wrong, but because you're busy or it's your thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Everything's not
yeah,
about us.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's relieving, right? To be able to, and
yeah.
actually, I do have to still self-talk about certain things. I don't know why I do experience this. There's one particular friend who spreads herself very thin. She's got many, many friends. And once in a while, if I don't hear from her, I'm like, oh, what's happening? Is she upset with me? And that's an old record, playing, right? And I have
Yeah.
to say that's silly. There's nothing that's happened in my awareness. But then there's always, well, is it not in my awareness, right? That she's upset. But it never comes to fruition. So how many times do I need to say that to myself before, you can kind of stop playing that old record? Because everybody was
Yeah,
mad all the time, right? When you're growing up.
yeah.
And you
I
never
was
knew
listening.
why. You never knew why, what set them off, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. So no, exactly what you're saying. I was listening to a podcasty kind of thing, a webinar with Bessel van der Kolk.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how
Trauma
when,
guru.
yeah, body keeps the score. The body keeps the score. Um, he was talking in particular about the egocentricity of kids, and how if there's anything going on in their world, they're automatically going to turn it into, like, if there's good going on, it's because I'm good. If there's bad going on, it's because I'm bad. And so how much we that gets absorbed, and if we have trauma during that time, how it gets, that becomes so imprinted in us. That becomes how we see the world, how we grow up. And if it's constant, like complex PTSD, where it's constant every day, which is often the case with siblings, with sibling abuse,
Totally.
in a way that isn't with even a lot of other kinds of abuse, because of the 24/7 access and the people in charge not necessarily paying attention,
Mhm.
that it really gets embedded,
Yeah.
that I must have done something wrong. I'm bad.
Yeah.
I'm I'm the reason the world is falling apart.
Right. And then, I mean, right. And what a hardship to carry because that stays with you for a very long time, if not a lifetime. That totally can get better if you work on it. And, kind of creeps in much, much less than, when you kind of started out evolving into an adult. But if you don't tend to it, right, and if you don't learn how to recognize that it's you playing an old tape, you're going to suffer
Yeah,
because those are really some ingrained messaging.
yeah. And I think it still surprises me to know that a lot of people, and you can expand on this a little bit, um, really don't want to go back to their childhood and look at it.
It's too painful. Yeah.
Yeah, like it, I always knew, and this is, I just always knew you have to go back. You have to go back. It's the root of it. It's like I just intuitively knew that that's the way we work. And so, but so many people are
Resist.
too afraid of it, right? Don't
Yes.
know that, don't believe it. Do you think it's a belief
Yes.
or just a fear?
Oh, that's great. Is it a belief or a fear? I think they're both and two sides of a coin.
Mm,
I think, therapy in general, or however you're going to work on that, going back to childhood and thinking about it and feeling through it, right? Is like, who wants to do that? And a lot of times, like what I've realized is you're doing it anyway. You might not be doing it with a therapist or somebody else, but it's in your head all the time and it's coming up for you all the time. You might not be living in it, but you got to work through it to get past it. It's really, my belief is the only way. Because the person that you're working with should validate your experiences, right? Which you didn't get. I mean, they are real. And the pain and the trauma and how it gets played out and how it sits with you throughout your life has to be looked at so that you can develop a new perspective that not everybody perceives you in the same way and is going to treat you in the same way. If you don't address it, it's really going to be a monkey on your back for
mm.
a lifetime.
And do you think that that work can happen on your own? Do you
Oh
think people,
boy. Oh boy, I haven't come across somebody in particular regarding sibling abuse who said that they're over it, and I put in quotes over it because what does that even look like? Um, I don't know how that works. I don't. And if there is, please let us know.
I don't
Um,
either.
because you've got the
I
golden ticket, right? For anybody out there, you've got the golden ticket. How did you do that? And let us learn from you. But I don't know. I think we're such complicated beings. Um, yeah, I wish that were true.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with, and you know, all the research shows that it's the connection that makes the difference. It's
Agreed
that that's
100%.
key to why therapy is effective.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I see therapy as like reparenting in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can't really pay somebody to care. So when you talk about that, it's through the relationship. it takes time, like any relationship. And especially for people who've been abused, there's trust issues, right? So, to say that you're going to trust a therapist from day one, that's not necessarily realistic. You got to build a relationship, you got to get to know each other, you got to, develop a genuine, warm, caring relationship. And then that person who's skilled in working with you can, I mean, I don't want to get into the intricacies of how therapy actually does work, although maybe that's helpful. And if it is, please let me know, folks out there, and we'll do an episode on that. But it is definitely through the relationship that growth and repair happens. It's actually called in theory a corrective emotional experience. And if you think about that language in and of itself, it's kind of explanatory. The person becomes somebody who you really value their voice. So you're transferring, right, all we expect, want, and desire from our parents and our sibling onto somebody else who um, is a better person for that.
Yeah. And how do we, this wasn't one of the questions I ran by you, but how many therapists, like, how many? I'd like a number, please, a
How many
solid
therapists does it take to change a light bulb, right? Well, first the light bulb has to want to change.
on a change. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Um, no, just are just the idea of sibling abuse and recognizing that, because so much of the treatment and the healing is not all that different from other kinds of abuse. There's specifics about sibling abuse that are helpful to know, but how vital is it that people seek out and find someone who really, really understands what sibling abuse is all about, or is a little bit of information enough?
Yeah, I think that that's a really good question. I think that therapists learn you, right? They learn from you and they learn about you. So that's why therapy can also take a little while because, you've developed into who you are, whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and beyond. It's going to take some time to, who are you, right? So to learn you. And a therapist doesn't necessarily know everything about substance abuse or everything about schizophrenia or depression on the way that you're experiencing it, whatever it might be, right? I'm not saying necessarily those things are connected to sibling abuse. They can be, but not necessarily. But the point is that we don't have all the answers on everything. We're learning through you. Should there be some grounding of knowledge about sibling abuse? That would be great, right? But because it's not yet, again, we've made progress, but not yet on the radar of all therapists or enough therapists. They might not be educated on sibling abuse, but what they must be educated on is the importance and relevance of sibling relationships in regard to how that shapes us as much in the way as parents do, right? And that's missing, I think, from a lot of folks, and an understanding of trauma and an understanding of attachments. So, if I were seeking a therapist to work on this particular issue, I would want them to have those pieces. So, knowledge of sibling relationships, the intensity of it, the duration of it, the impact of it, knowledge of trauma, and knowledge of what was the last thing I said? Knowledge of attachment theory and attachment styles, right? Because there's secure attachment, avoidant attachment, ambivalent attachment, different forms, and this shapes how we relate to other people. Very, very important.
Nailed it. I think
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
What do you?
one of
Oh,
my,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was going to ask you. Can I ask you?
yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing for people to know? Not just helping professionals, but maybe anybody and everybody, unless you have different views about who should know what. right? But what would you want people to know about sibling abuse?
That it's real, that it is not rivalry, that it has an impact that can last a lifetime, that in and I'm you people might disagree with me on this, but in some ways, because we have been grounded, we know, everybody knows that child abuse exists, that abuse from parents exists, it's real, we hear about it all the time, and spousal abuse we hear about all the time, that the not hearing about it is I think you call it, no, it's something else, you call a double whammy, but um it adds a layer of pressure onto it and makes it less, seems to make it less real because nobody knows about it. So that silence and that, like, I think that's such an important part of it, that
Yeah, living alone
just
with it,
naming
right?
it.
So please
Yeah,
name it.
yeah,
Yes, let's name it. Let's get this
yeah,
out there. And if anybody's listening, you can be part of that movement, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about you if you still are contending with shame about it. But you can just talk about it as a concept, you know?
hmm.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I spoke to a prof once in a social service area, social work, social service area, who had been more of the perpetrator in their family as a kid. And it was really interesting to see someone who was knowledgeable about the impact of abuse, who hadn't considered for themselves that they could have been the perpetrator of that, that they could have been the cause of that. And I'm sure I've said to you before, as Gabor Mate said once when I happened to talk to him at a conference, he said the perpetrator is a victim too, and to remember that
Yeah.
it, the, both are going to be impacted, both are going to be harmed by that.
That's an interesting thing because for years I have been saying I need to do research on the perpetrator. I have not yet gotten to that, as we talk about often. It's hard to get to everything on our list, but it's
Yeah.
amazing that people aren't looking into that, right? So maybe I won't be the first, and that's okay. Somebody, should understand what motivates the perpetrator, the harmer, to perpetrate, I'm looking for another word, right? Sibling abuse. Something is clearly going on with them. And when we think about bullying and all of the research and media that's been given attention to it, we're not only looking at the victim, we're looking at the perpetrator, the bullier, and what causes it and what creates that. And right. So the same goes for siblings, that this is a um, symptom of a family dynamic, right? It is not just between the siblings. Something is going on structurally within the family, um, the core family dynamics that creates this. However, I will say there's a caveat to that. Sometimes the perpetrator in isolation, right, from any dysfunctional family dynamics is going through their own thing. They could be a substance abuser. They could have a mental illness. That there is nothing that the family did, so to speak, right, that created this. But my research found that there is a lot going on in the family. We've talked about favoritism, we talked about being in the caregiver role and the resentment that builds from that, and scarce resources, either for the family or for one member of the family, right? That families have to be nourished, caregivers have to be nourished so that they can nourish their children. On and on. You can look at our research or listen to earlier episodes about that. But yeah, it is complex. And it's often, we need to think about that with parents who perpetrate child abuse as well, right? Like oftentimes research shows parents have been victims of child abuse, and then they're repeating, right, a familiar pattern, and just what they know, right? Or what they didn't know, what they didn't get. It's the same kind of parallel.
And is there much research on that, on perpetrators as of adult perpetrators? Like, is that does that really get? I'm like not an academic, right? I don't
Oh,
I
that's
don't.
all right.
But
Perpetrators of
is
child
there
abuse, you mean?
much? Sorry.
Or perpetrators of parent-child abuse?
Yeah, like of adults. Are they really looking at that?
They
They,
have,
they
yes.
have. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And there's, many factors,
Yeah.
substance abuse, mental illness, parenting, modeling, all these things. Yeah.
So, what do we need to do? What do you think we need to
Oh my
do
God. What do we
to get it out there more? What are some, just brainstorm?
Yeah, well, I certainly have some thoughts about that. I think we need legislation that identifies sibling abuse as a real phenomenon, and then child welfare services, or Department of Social Services, or whatever you call it in your district, would have something to work with to investigate when these things were reported. But even going before that, right? So then, well, first of all, then they would need training, right? Training on what are the manifestations of sibling abuse. How do you discover this in childhood? How do you protect a child from this? What systems are in place? Are we going to remove children from their family, and which child? I mean, so there's a lot of work to be done there. So policy, but even before putting it on the map with child welfare, we have to make people aware that this is a phenomenon. It's serious. And despite the study that was conducted in the 1970s that says that it's the most, what's the word? Sorry, just lost the
Prolific?
word. Prolific and common form of sibling abuse. I mean, I'm sorry, of any type of abuse, of
Family abuse.
any family abuse. Let's spit it out. Yeah, that we're still in this place. How many years later? 30, 40, 50 years later. That's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, what I've worked on doing is training mental health professionals that you can't just ask about the impact of parent-child relations. You need to explore the nature and quality of sibling relationships. So the fact that sibling relationships is very well known in the psychoanalytic literature and the psychodynamic literature about its impact, we're not translating that to what happens when that sibling relationship is really disturbed, right? Not just dysfunctional, not just sibling rivalry, but really, damaging. Those are some thoughts. I think that, it could also help to make this a part of curriculum, right? Like wherever we're teaching about child abuse, wherever we're teaching about human behavior, wherever we're talking about community, wherever, I mean, there's so many policy, right? And all these courses that they have in graduate school, but maybe this is something that can be done in high schools. What about kids in elementary school who are suffering from this and teachers have no ability to identify this, right? Tough. And I
So
hear
much
myself.
work.
It's so much work, so much
There's
work to
so
be
much
done.
work we have to
So
do.
much work. And, I mean, it's really hopeful because there are a lot of organizations who are dedicated to specific, exploring, researching, providing resources for sibling abuse, that we've come a long way. But, like a lot of these social issues, gay rights, I mean, everything, right? Trans, everything, racism, sexism, all of it. We've made progress. We go back a couple of, 100 yards or more. And, especially in the socio-political climate we are in now, how do we keep the momentum?
We just
Mhm.
do.
We
How do
just
you?
do.
I mean, I know for me, it's like I there's nothing that I have felt more compelled to follow through and make change about. Like I just know in my heart and soul, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what needs to happen.
Yes.
So it's like air. It's like a
Well,
fish in water.
you're a godsend, and there's many people, thankfully, like you, who feel as passionate and are doing the work and are spreading awareness and are spreading their, taking their, this is their livelihood now. They're not necessarily making a good financial living from it, but their dedication and passion drives them. And thankfully, they have other resources in which they can maintain some stable form of living. But yeah, it's usually the people who have been through it
Mhm.
that feel that strongly, which is interesting because I realize that when I teach like my diversity course, I talk a lot about allyship, how, if you're a woman, you need men who are going to support your cause because they have the power. If you're a person of color, you need white folks to, right, fight your cause. If you're gay, you need straight people. So if you're a sibling abuse survivor, you need those who aren't survivors who will hear you in a very different way than just us as, oh, poor victims, right? Or, I don't know, whatever they may feel or think about it, you're making too big of a deal of this, right? So we need the allies.
So what keeps you going? Where does your fire come from?
Oh boy, where does my come from? I guess from wanting people who have had this experience not to feel that sense of aloneness, that they don't have to, one, feel shame because there's nothing they did that allowed this to happen. I want people to feel that there is healing from this. I want people to feel that they don't have to go through this alone, that there are other people who've experienced this, and that we are spreading awareness, and that hopefully, whatever reaction that they think that they're going to face, does not exist wholly. That if you've been taught what happens in the family stays in the family, that you don't have to. You are an adult now, I'm assuming, right? Those who are listening are adults for the most part. And you are not that little child anymore that didn't have power. Now, right, you get to have a voice. You get to tell your story if you want to tell your story. You get to, access resources that will help you grow from this. We feel really helpless when we're children, I think in general, but when you've been traumatized, you carry with that, I'm not allowed to have a voice. I don't know how to have a voice, that nobody's going to listen to me, nobody's going to care. We've been conditioned, right? And sometimes I'm going to say this, I hope it doesn't sound bravado, but as I hear myself speak and I listen to not only the voice that I have and use, but I'm really opinionated. I mean, I have strong views. And, as a kid, as an adolescent, as a young adult, as a middle adult, this was not me. So I've been transformed, to use that word, if that resonates at all. Sometimes I don't recognize myself because that was such an entrenched part of who I was, that it's like, oh, I still sometimes question, am I too much? Is this right? Like, you're too much. And that's the trigger earlier, like with my father, it's like, oh, you're speaking too loud, or oh, calm down. And it's, oh, I'm animated, and I do have views, and I hope I'm not imposing them on people who don't want to hear them, but I'm still going to express myself. Ta-da!
Hey, no, that's awesome on so many levels. The first one thing that came to my mind is like just your response to my question. You are the quintessential therapist. Like you
Oh,
immediately went to, I want to help the individual. I want to help people to feel within themselves more whole and find their voice. So it's like you are just so in the right position. You have found
oh,
your
thank you.
calling.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, like you just so that's so clearly who you are in
Oh,
everything you exude.
oh, thank you. Well, that
Yeah,
means a
yeah,
lot. That's
yeah. Oh
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
that's what keeps me going, kind of knowing
Mm,
that, it's funny because when you start as a therapist, and this goes on for years, you're not quite sure how much good you're doing for the other person, and you're questioning yourself all the time. But now I see it because a lot of people don't necessarily say that, they don't articulate it, but you see, how you can help other people.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so that keeps
Yeah,
me going, certainly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is telling our stories and speaking and finding our voice. One of the things that I have on my website, which is siblingabuse.ca, I have a storyboard. And I know there are organizations that are collecting stories, but they're not necessarily publishing them. And I have created the storyboard because I think it's really important that the stories are heard and not just to each other. Like, and there's some private Facebook groups where people are telling their stories, but it's other survivors who are listening to them. And I think one of the things that really makes a big difference and I saw this in the play, like so many people after were so grateful to hear stories.
Hmm.
And so I want to invite people to come to the website and tell their story. It can be completely anonymous. Um, I don't even get an email address unless you give it to me.
Hmm.
And I will read the story and edit it out because it's in question format if you want to
Okay.
put it in question format, or you can just write a story. But just so that other people can hear the truth of what it is that we've lived through, because that's what makes people go, oh my God, I did not have any idea that that could be the impact of, kids fighting.
Yeah. I think that that's wonderful that you're offering that to people. And we'll shout it out again, siblingabuse.ca. I think that, talk about healing, there's a cathartic process to writing your story, right? I can't really explain how that works very eloquently, but many, many people have spoken to that idea, and I think that research shows that as well. It's your voice, your way of telling it, not just writing it, but also telling it. If you do decide to enter therapy, there's something very therapeutic, even if it is painful, in getting it out.
Yeah.
So thank you for offering that. And I'm going to say thank you for being in conversation with me about this. You have been so open, right, in the episodes that you were on where you did share your story. And I think that a casual kind of informal conversation like this, I hope, people can really relate to. And there are pieces of this that resonate for them. And you too are, a natural, you're articulate, you're eloquent, you're, very personable. And I hope people will check out your website. And I also want to say that Lorene is involved in research with Dr. Joe Michalski from Canada, and they're involved in the first national study on adolescent sibling conflict, aggression, and abuse. And I'm really excited, as I hope you'll be, for their findings. So you have to stay tuned for that because it's in the works. It will be published, and I will certainly provide that as a resource when it's available. But Lorene, it's always great being in conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. I love our conversations, whether it's in the podcast or off. Yeah, I'm really grateful you do this. Yep, yep, yep.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Talk soon.